Dominic Mata.
Tudo bem, gente?
So I would like to check with you that has just talked. I heard faith. You said faith, right? This is about resilience. You talked about faith. And you talked about partnership, but I think Sandra already talked about partnership when you talked about communication means and the need to make people visible, for us to be able to understand that this is not just a fight of a community in a certain place, but it's a collective fight from all of us. And then I saw a lot of places you talked about unity. So in the university students, you talked about the importance of them as well. Well, in my experience, as far as the response to exclusion and violence issues and the understanding our capacity of dealing with that, these issues that you raise always talk about conflict. Because conflict follows our daily lives, not only conflict when it comes from outside, trying to transforming our reality and expel us from the places where we live, which is our case, but also the conflict that happens inside our communities, which works to divide people and to get them weaken them. So what I would like to raise, to add to this conversation with today here about this social injustice, is the issue of justice itself. How does it work? How can we create mechanisms to respond to conflict that will admit that we keep firm the groups that already are, and to preserve these free spaces within society, or in case willing to create more free spaces. So to think in new ways and to rescue some things that already exist or that want to exist for a long time. So now we are here at the beach. I don't know if somebody else talked about that. This is the missing beach, one that we have never seen, because this here used to be a beach and now it's asphalt. And it was a beach that they used to say it was one of the most beautiful beaches in Rio, but we have never seen it because look at it. So I remember from a long time ago, in another moment, the same fight. It was May 66 in Paris. Underground, under the street, there used to be a beach. That was one of the revolutionary fights at the time. But here in this building, this is literally true. We see under this building, there is a beach. A lot of what we do when we respond to situations of violence and conflict situations is to rescue the knowledge that has never been done with, but is never presented, is never visible for us. Like this beach is invisible for us right now. So where can we get the leadings for this? Usually is in parts of societies that are away from the power centers, the parts that we try to make invisible. So in other words, the core of the power, they try to make them invisible and to get them away as far as possible, to keep them from being visible to us, because if they are visible, they are experienced as a threat, as a provocation, as a confrontation, something that is uncomfortable for the people that are there in the power structures. So this the community is something that it's uncomfortable to our mayors for a long time. It's a historical fight, because this space, they are contradictory to the predominant logic. So the structural power is where we see the power natural and necessary for the one that has the capacity to act, to do a difference. It gets crystallized and it gets fixed and solid. So when this doesn't contribute any more, it is still there. The problem is there. So it's not a matter of having different functions within a group of a society, people that do different things. The problem is when this becomes fixed and unchangeable, because life is constantly changing. So when this happens, we see a healthy conflict. Conflict is not a problem, it's a feedback about any kind of social system that tells you something has changed. We need to change our way of living due to this change. A society that tries to make these spaces invisible, the places where people still know how to live communally, they cultivate an aversion to this conflict because we are raised being afraid of conflict and fearing conflict, believing that is a very dangerous thing. But when we buy this idea, then nobody needs to change our mind because we've done it ourselves. Because when you have the conflict, you are not able to participate into a democratic proposal, because democracy needs that. It feeds on these different ideas. Democracy cultivates different opinions, and the discussion, the dialogue and debate about these differences, to be able to find how we can constantly live and improve that. So when we start looking into this space and understand the need of rescuing these logics that have been put away and to cure our aversion against conflict, then we start rebuilding these in our lives. These things that had been outsourced to other people. Please solve my problems in my conflicts here, because this is something that I hadn't been raised as somebody that understands that actually I am afraid of the fact that I'm different from you and that I disagree with you, and you are afraid of the very same thing. So this aversion to conflict makes it necessary to live a life in which we cultivate insincerity, when I don't tell you the truth because the truth touches, the truth changes, and I'm counting that you won't be telling me the truth either, because if you start telling a level of truth beyond what I can take, I will accuse you of doing something that is threatening me, that is bothering me, and then we make up all these kinds of fictitious rights about the right of being always comfortable. For example, tell me a little bit about your stuff, but not too much because I will be uncomfortable. This kind of logic. And we are living this process, and we see this being less and less powerful, and is being more and more done away with the mechanisms of interference to make it possible for people to be part of the society and build society in a different way. So I would like to bring back some elements which would be an opening gate for us to debate on this subject, so that we can come up with some practical things. Is managing a system in a series of actions that are coordinated to answer conflict, not as a threat, not as a problem, neither as something that needs to be solved. The word that suggests that conflict is a rock that is bothering me or that threatens me, that needs to be dissolved. No, so it's not resolving the conflict, but creating spaces in which the conflict can flow, it can exist. That I can find conflict and say, hi there, conflict, what are you going to teach me today? Not because I don't think it's going to bother me. I know it will touch me, because the change change brings this kind of feeling. But that's what happens when we start really relating ourselves with others. You influence me, you change me, and I influence you, and I change you. This is a mutual motivation. So of course I'm going to be bothered somehow. But how can we build these systems? How can we build these spaces? This morning, Adri and I, we were having our breakfast close by with somebody that is part of the Ocupamink, which is the occupation of the Canecão that is right here. If for you that is not from here, Canecão is icon space that has been abandoned for many years. It's empty, and it has just been occupied from people that were occupying the Ministry of Culture in answer to this very peculiar political moment that we are living in Brazil right now. Why was this necessary? Because after a few days, weeks, and months, these people, just like any other group that I see, they start going through conflict. And they notice that the justice system in an organized way is not something that is an option. You either choose it consciously how you want to answer to conflict, or you imagine that you will notice that you will have adopted the predominant way of doing things in society. You'll be importing to your family from the court, from all the other spaces in which decisions are made for conflict, a specific way of answering to conflict. And you will notice that this is usually authoritative, spanitive, organized, based on looking for the mistake of the other, and then you have expulsion, putting the person away from the group. Since that person is being judged guilty of having done that. So with this, we think this proposal of social change ends up being a reproduction of something that is reproduced and that keeps a certain logic of exclusion, marginalization, and all. So this talk this morning, as many others that we've had in these 2 decades that I've been investigating these issues, is trying to answer these questions that you have answered right there at the end of your talk. What do we already know that is working well when we look for the conditions to have more dialogue instead of less dialogue, for more social cohesion instead of less than that? We have a series of knowledge about that. We understand, we engage ourselves in this fight. We study history of different fights in different conflict moments of organized conflict in society, but we know that in the end of the day, every fight ends with a conversation. Sometimes, like yesterday, it takes 52 years and 200,000 deaths. But Colombia shows us that the wars end in conversation. My ancestors came from Ireland. 800 years of people killing each other, of prohibiting the language, of expelling people, of big removal of people, not only removal of part of the city to another, but getting whole communities from a whole country to another country. All that in an attempt of having a social engineering, and violence only ends when people finally sit down and talk and decide to live together as a culture. And we know that's the end of it. So let's use this knowledge we have and use this question. What we already know that works well when we are answering conflict. Not in a way that separates people like our actual systems do, but in a way that would strengthen the links that we have in society that makes it possible for society and community. And after that, let's have a second question. What do we already know that we need to avoid? What has we already tried and we thought it doesn't work? What kind of internal organizations have been made? What kind of debate and ways of living with the differences that we already know that doesn't work in case we want to strengthen our capacity of living together dynamically and along with diversity, not this small diversity that we've been satisfied with nowadays around a certain group. No, I want real diversity, total diversity. In other words, to be completely at peace, to contradict the other, and to contradict me relates to what I was. I don't want to have the freedom to have to be from different groups, but to be unique. And what is the biggest thing about you is that you are completely different from the other 6 billion people. And this, is, for me, goes beyond right. I don't have time to wait for people to mobilize themselves in a way that they promoted. I'm talking about need, authority that affirms these authorities right here. It's only, fellowship. So we can be organized and promoted by the state if the state finally wants to be together. But if not, I won't be waiting. I won't just wait to go to the street to claim for my rights. I will go there to demonstrate. I'm already it. So in this reason, I have a lot of knowledge of what doesn't work. I know what restricts life in me, what makes myself a marginal, what separates me from you. I know not only in terms of action, but also in the way of thinking. I know how the school system has put inside my head all these different ideas and a fictitious psychology that makes up these ideas that some people are problematic, some are difficult, some are aggressive and violent, others are passive, others are cool.
I want to see how this way of thinking makes it easier or more logical for people to be distant and we could not sustain our action of leaving the world. I want to find how our studies on organization or how to relate makes the same, how my participation in the social structures and also how my way of learning, my way of distributing resources, my participation in the economic system that we have, how all this feed and justify a justice system that makes it impossible for the social change to be effective. And thirdly, I'd like to collect the intelligence that we have of dreaming of how it would be, things would be different. Yesterday, well, we are implementing the logic that I'm sharing with you. It's in many places in Rio. It's born once again in those neighborhoods that are forgotten or not seen by the society. Restructure justice, formally speaking, in Brazil. You won't see this online. You won't see this in the books published. And I hope that when you read that, you think, why this history is not the one that is told? Justice in Brazil starts in Dona Marta, a favela here nearby, then in Vidigal and Morro dos Prazeres, and spread in 9 years, mainly in those community spaces, in those neighborhoods that are not considered neighborhoods in the city, with the population living there. That due to being distant from the center of power have the capacity of being preserved in one another places but covered by concrete like Praia da Saudade, which I live down here. So the third question that which may equally raises within us now, and we are now taking to the Gazi in the bodies that before were called FEBEM here in Rio, the bodies for childhood. This needs to have good quality that makes us proud. This creation of a new justice system is something that you are happy to show your friends. Yesterday, we went to Creade in Teresópolis, and when we arrived there, the director of the unit received us and welcomed us very well. She prepared breakfast. Before doing that, she would like to show the order to us. And you could see the smile in her face when she wanted to show the formation that she had. And we all went there to see the lettuce or the cauliflowers or the chickens that were right this plantation. So what is the justice system which gave you this pleasure of showing to the others? See how we answer to the conflicts here in the family. See how the social project is aligned with the values even when answering to the conflicts. See how the community is even more resilient than before. Since we started, we are responsible for how we make this recycling of our conflicts. We recycle our disputes to get stronger from this energy. So the third intelligence that I would like to show is the capacity that we have to dream of how a justice system would be if it was not coherent with our values and principles. If we were that happy to show other people how to use this way of entering into conflict, we couldn't wait to show the others, hey, look what we found. It is not necessary that we share or lose this unit when we diverge in opinion. We can be more resilient and not less resilient from that. What is beautiful is that processes like this with restoration systems, and they are restorative because it means being up again, and conflicts generally destroy. I mean, my daughter faced her first robbery last Wednesday. She dealt very well with that, considering everything, but even though she spent 4 days without wanting to go outside home. This experience of conflict destroys more than anything else. So how can we create rebuilding systems with a social organization answering to conflicts in a way that we be up and more resilient than less resilient? I am curious, what are you thinking or questioning or wondering to share from that? Okay, I'll share my microphone with you. Well, it's very difficult for me to think about diversity of opinion with very extreme issues. So I try to look, for example, a person that is in favor of military intervention. I am a journalist. I try to interview this person and understand what she said. But I received this in a way that I cannot deal with. So when the opinions are very divergent, is there a technique to accept or collect a thought that is completely diverse from everything that you have ever imagined? Well, yes, there is a technique. It's here in my pocket. I will show you everything you need to do to solve your problems. Okay, can I be a little bit boring on your way of describing the situation? Okay, so thank you. First of all, look how the question is organized so that you redistribute the power from you to any possible external authority. Unfortunately, I'm giving it back to you. because otherwise we reproduce the system of justice once again. I cannot do it, so I'm not empowered for that. So please, other person in other situation, like the judge or whatever, will be the person to give this answer to you. So the dynamics is powering since the beginning. It's so influent that no matter what, how you answer, I can be a genius and answer in a way to impress and give you hope. But the fact is that you gave up the power that is only yours and can only be yours. And at some time will go back to you, even if it takes 52 years and a lot of deaths. First of all, I cannot do it. How come? What is this? I can't do it. No, I have great difficulty to do so. It's a fact. Or we took it from a language that seems to be psychology to create a secret combination among us, like I will pretend I have no power to act, facing the challenges of my life. I know it's strange, but pay attention to this. Tomorrow, if you need me to agree with you saying that you have no power, we have disagreement. So we set up for us that we cannot do some things, and we take away from us a difficult truth that you choose to put your attention in other place. You prefer to focus on other things. This is an option, not a lack of capacity. You can do a lot of things. Your process of choosing sometimes is from a range of options, and you hate all of them. You didn't create this menu. This menu came from all those hundreds of years with all the restrictions and distribution of power within it. But it is a process of choosing. So many times for me to do something that I don't know how to do, and everybody explains to me that it's not possible, and I believe I don't have capacity, or lack of money, lack of time, lack of knowledge, or colleagues, or general notion, they convince me that this is the case. And many times facing this situation, I prefer to focus in things that I know how to do somehow, and take advantage of this excuse of saying, oh, I can't do it. Okay, another provocation. I know this is a habit of language, but they are indicators of a combination that we make to be away from our capacity of co-creating the world we want to live in. So the last thing is that I know what you want to say, but when you say that you have to interview this other person, is this true that you have to interview this person? Or is only true that when you look at the consequences of not doing it, you don't like the consequences? Probably the consequences in terms of acknowledgement to your work or financial consequences. Is it this way? It is a punctual activity that when I go to the camp, it's a task. It's given to me hierarchically. I may not do, for example, I go to the cemetery to make the news about a person who died, and I never tell what people were feeling because I understand that it is a violence to me, to myself, and to the people. I'm forgetting the history of the person who died and taking the focus to other things that are not relevant, not to me or not to anybody else. But in this case, it is important because it's a voice that is there, and I need to hear it. I mean, if journalism was perfect, we would listen to all the voices and talk only subjectively. It can be done if I think in a different way, a new way, if I behave just like you said, but it's difficult. So when I'm facing a difficult task, I want to ask myself what are the support resources that I need to do that. And not only I will do or not. Because anything that is worth doing in terms of social justice and transformation, if you look honestly, if you map everything, what is possible, you will evaluate and say, well, it will hurt a lot. And in the end, it's most probable that I lose it. Obviously. Because society is organized to prevent the changes that we want to be established in a more systemic and long-lasting way. So it is necessary that I am aware of the resources that I need to act. What are the resources that I need to act? We had some things about it: faith, union, partnership. These are obvious elements that I need to go further and make the change. But let's forget all the things, and you are facing the opinion of someone who is radically different from yours. And please interrupt me if I'm wrong, but you see that your body reaction is strong to that speech. That person explains that the only way of banishing corruption in Brazil is going back to the military system. That's what you said, right? I know that very well because I deal with this attitude in my family, and many relatives in my family tell me that because those relatives were part of the army and they sustained the values and benefits and advantages of the military power and the problems that happened since then. I know it very well, and my body, my organism answers in a way that probably is not that different from yours. I shout, I feel that heat coming to my head, the tension, and in the name of peace and justice and society and against the violence and repression, I want to kill the person in front of me. And I'm aware that this phenomena is not something that I created. It was inherited. It was given to me by society. And this way of thinking, this way of using language or acting from this logic is very well established for a very interesting reason. I am in a fatal contradiction. 2 years ago and last year again, I was part of a process of civil war in other continent. This intelligence of building systems created by a foreigner that are completely lost with 40 words in Portuguese and a group of children with nothing to do, sitting on the streets in the neighborhoods that I mentioned before, the neighborhoods considered invisible, favelas here in Rio, they are present in 40 countries in the world. And is being used in this situation of civil war for 33 years of people doing horrible things as they did up to yesterday in Colombia. During one of the conversations we had with a group of rebellions that are fighting against the government for 3 decades, we heard, my friend heard and told me that sometimes the only way to make people understand you is to kill them. Interesting, right? Because the contradiction is obvious, probably a little bit more to us because at this moment, probably none of us is fighting with guns. But if I am a little bit more flexible, I can see that I think the same way, particularly when I am facing this kind of situation. So we think the same way, especially when I am facing a stupid situation. The first thing that I want to note, the logic that I shouldn't be fighting against takes all my power away immediately. immediately. So let me calm down. If you work with nonviolence, so don't work others to do that, because you repress inside yourself the desire of taking this person away from you. And this person is a person that 5 minutes before you loved and was playing with your kids in a very nice way. And you know that this person sustains the family, you know how the mother loves the son. So the first thing is the imposition of a repressor and punitive system. But it's not enough. I want to go beyond that and understand what comes afterwards when I do not repress, do not condemn what could be written as a violent feeling inside myself. I start being curious about it. So where does it come from? Where all this feeling comes from, this desire of so much action? It comes from something deep and unnegotiable within myself, my hope and my desire for a world that in which everybody wants to change, and in which there is a space to all the diversity existing here. I want it deeply. My mental health is not good because I don't have it. My sleep is not good because I don't have it. It impacts my way of thinking and smiling and loving and everything.
So this is not my fault. I'm not sick because I have hunger for justice. And it's not my problem because I cry, because I get emotional. This is a sign of health. This feeling, which is labeled as negative, like anger, revolt, and all that, this is a sign that I haven't given up. It's a sign of life, not my life. It doesn't belong to me. That's what the universe does to my organism. I can repress and get sick, or I can move from this force, and all this energy is coming with the change. But how does the change happen? How can I create a channel that makes it possible that my message gets to another person in the same spirit that was given? I need to have the same intelligence when they invent miracles such as this gut. Haven't seen one like this for a long time, right? This is Poisas Up. Post-robbery cell phone, because I decided to use the resources that I have to other people. Then I found this one in the drawer 6 years after nobody has ever used, and it turned off immediately. It is very good. I had forgotten how good it was. You just can't send a very long message because otherwise I just see ... and no emotions, no nothing, just letters. So the people that have invented this technology, they're very smart, because they know that before it can be used as a means of communications, it needs to first establish a signal. That's why I'm a faithful enrollment 14, because he's the only one that guarantees me that I won't have a sign every day. And when I don't have it, I just remember that there is a precondition for us to understand each other, for this very big need for justice that gets to you in a way that you can understand. It's a way that for you to understand behind, below, and under. Inside your need, your desire for military government, you have a desire that I also have. We can disagree about the way of doing things, but we are united with the logic that unites this way. If I know how to establish a communication between you and I and strengthen this, even more when we are different in our opinions or the way of life or ways of fellowshipping, then we are able to listen to the other. If I'm able to listen to you, so maybe who knows, one day we might be able to live in democracy. I don't want to restrict his speech in a dominating way, because if I'm accusing you, throwing you, labeling you, and dehumanizing you, Everything in Brasilia will remain the same. Thank you. But I can't repress myself. Oh, I need to meditate more. I need to be more specific. I need to read that book or do that course. I need to learn to articulate myself politically in a more coherent way. I need more and more and more. So I'm always insufficient. Paulo Freire said that for you to change, you just need to think that we are incomplete and that this is the problem. So nothing will change instead of potentializing the fantastic for this change. So I don't want to accuse you and I don't want to accuse myself. I want to learn to establish this capacity to bring unity between both of us that doesn't negate but doesn't submit ourselves to the fact that we have different opinions. I don't want to hide how much it hurts me to hear that you're saying that we need a military government, but it's not because of that that I cannot hear you and listen to you. So when you start cultivating this logic, you're able not only to sustain and to be the restorative system, but also we are able to make it work. Deal with the conflict and start understanding that when I bring you to a dialogue that is facilitated by somebody or something that we do between ourselves, I'm caring for our relationship. It's not a problem. It's not a fault, a failure. It's an opportunity for us to heighten up the levels of cohesion and intimacy between us. It's like anything. We need something that reminds us of our shared humanity. And this is something that I don't need to wait somebody else to come and do it with the groups that you work with in your home, with the different movements in which you are involved. You are already experiencing conflict, don't you? Conflict is a healthy part of our social fellowshipping. But what is the logic that is beyond and under the concrete that I can rescue to inform myself, to be able to understand conflict as a sign that I love, that I care? Because we only suffer the consequences of conflict, the ones that are the most important for me, and about the subjects that are more dear to me. So maybe you may think about everything you do for social justice and how justice is working inside of you and among you. And you start asking yourself this: what do I know that works well so that I can create more dialogue and understanding? What do I know that interferes in this and that I should avoid? And at last, how I dream that it could be. If in this moment in your profession as a journalist would be the way you would like it to be, how would be the dialogue and the understanding? And then you can start engaging yourself in the answer for this third question. And know that even though this idea might be new and different, a lot of things have changed in the last 21 years. From an impossible project that started with a very small group of people that were completely lost in society, 1 year ago, the President of the Supreme Court signed a document make it possible. And in December of last week, the National Council of Justice put it as a priority 8. From 2016, the whole child court, they need to adopt this kind of justice. It's now from 31st of May, resolution was made. Something that has been born long time ago now is being recognized as a policy. So now it's time for us to bring this back to us and to make sure that this process will be rooted and fed in the community spaces so that it won't be cut from the institutions, because this wouldn't be the first time to happen. Thank you very much.